The massive alien ship appeared, without warning, above Earth's moon. It was 3 times larger than any human space station, gleaming silver against the black void of space. On the bridge of the orbital platform New Horizon, Commander Jake Morrison watched the readings on his screen with growing amazement. "Sir, we're getting a transmission," said Lieutenant Sophie Garcia from her position at the communications console. Her fingers moved quickly across the controls as strange symbols filled. Her screen. Jake stood up from his captain's chair and walked over to her station. "Can you make sense of it?" "It's not like anything we've seen before," Sophie replied. "But the computer is starting to find patterns. Give me a few minutes." Down on Earth, Dr. Lisa Carter was rushing through the halls of the United Nations Space Command. As Earth's top expert on alien life, she had been called in the moment the ship was detected. Admiral Pete Sullivan was waiting for her in the main control room, his face serious. "What do we know so far?" Lisa asked as she entered the room. "Big ship, unknown technology, and they're trying to talk to us," Pete said. "Our best computers are working on the language, but it's taking time." Back on the space station, Sophie suddenly looked up from her console. "Commander, I think I've got something." The message is repeating, and our computers have found the basic structure. Jake moved closer to the screen. "What are they saying?" "It's single quotes S. Strange, sir. They're speaking down to us like we're children. They say they come in peace and want to help us join something called the Galactic Council. But they make it sound like we're too primitive to understand much." Jake frowned. "Primitive? We've got space stations, nuclear power, and we've been to Mars. How primitive can we be?" On the alien ship Astral Dawn, Captain Veltar was studying his own screens. The blue and green planet below looked peaceful enough. His long, thin fingers moved across controls that would be impossible for humans to use. "Status report," he said to his science officer, Kessara. "The planet shows signs of early nuclear technology," she replied. "Basic satellite networks, some space travel, but nothing advanced. They appear to be in their early space age, perhaps 200 or 300 years into industrial development." Veltar nodded. "Standard procedure, then. We offer them junior membership in the Council, provide basic technology transfers, and guide their development." "How long before they can respond to our message?" "Given their primitive communication systems, probably several days to decode our language, maybe weeks to formulate a proper response." But Veltar was wrong. Very wrong. 3 hours later, Sophie Garcia looked up from her station with surprise. "Commander Morrison, we're receiving another transmission, but this one is different." Jake hurried over. "Different how?" "It's in perfect galactic standard, sir." "Galactic what?" "That's what they call their language. And somehow we're speaking it perfectly." Sophie's voice carried a note of confusion. "The message says Earth requests a formal embassy exchange and asks to schedule diplomatic meetings according to standard galactic protocols." Jake stared at the screen. "We know galactic protocols?" "Apparently we do, sir. The message is signed by Secretary of State Helen Parker. She's requesting that both sides follow the Zarkonian Accords for first contact between equal species." On the Astral Dawn, alarms were sounding. Kessara was staring at her communications array in shock. "Captain, this is impossible," she said, her voice shaking. "What's impossible?" Veltar demanded. "The humans just responded, in perfect galactic standard. They know our diplomatic procedures. They're quoting the Zarkonian Accords, which were written 3,000 years ago." Veltar's skin changed color, a sign of deep concern among his species. "That's not possible. How could a primitive species know ancient galactic law?" "I don't know, sir, but there's more. They're not asking for guidance or help. They're demanding equal treatment and formal recognition under the Galactic Constitution." Down on Earth, Helen Parker was in an emergency meeting with world leaders. The tall, blonde woman stood at the head of a conference table, addressing presidents and prime ministers via video link. "The situation is developing faster than expected," she said. "Our response has clearly surprised them. Dr. Carter, what's your assessment?" Lisa looked up from her tablet. "Based on their initial message, they expected us to be much more primitive. They thought it would take us weeks just to understand their language. The fact that we responded in 3 hours, using their own diplomatic protocols, has shaken them." "How do we know these protocols?" asked the President of the United States. Helen and Lisa exchanged glances. "That's complicated," Helen said carefully. "Let's just say that humanity has been preparing for this moment longer than most people realize." Back on the space station, Jake was preparing for the most important conversation of his life. The aliens had agreed to a direct communication link between their captain and him. The screen flickered, and suddenly Jake was looking at Captain Veltar. The alien was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. When he spoke, the computer translated his words instantly. "I am Captain Veltar of the Zephyrian Exploration Fleet," the alien said. "We come to offer your species guidance as you begin your journey into galactic civilization." Jake straightened in his chair. "I am Commander Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. We appreciate your visit, Captain. However, we must inform you that humanity is already familiar with galactic civilization. We request that these talks proceed under the Mutual Recognition Clause of the Galactic Constitution." Veltar's eyes widened. "You know the Constitution? But that's impossible. You're a young species, barely achieving spaceflight. With respect, Captain, I think you may have some incorrect information about humanity," Jake replied calmly. "We suggest a formal embassy exchange so that both our peoples can learn the truth about each other." The transmission ended with Veltar looking deeply troubled. On his ship, the captain turned to his science officer. "Kesara, I want a full scan of this planet. Something is very wrong here. A primitive species doesn't quote thousand-year-old galactic law or know diplomatic procedures that take most species decades to learn." "Yes, sir. But, Captain, what if they're not primitive at all?" Veltar stared at the blue planet below. "Then we may have made a very serious mistake in our assumptions about Earth." As news of the alien contact spread across Earth, humanity began to prepare for changes that would shake the galaxy. In hidden archives and secret libraries, ancient knowledge that had been carefully preserved for millennia was being brought into the light. The aliens thought they had discovered a young, primitive world. Soon, they would learn just how wrong they were about humanity's true heritage. 3 days after first contact, the alien ship Astral Dawn hung in orbit like a giant silver moon. Inside her research lab, Zephyrian scientist Kesara was studying everything she could find about human culture. What she was discovering made no sense at all. She pulled up another human document on her screen. This one was called Greek Mythology and was supposed to be ancient stories that humans told before they understood science. But as Kesara read, her hands began to shake. The stories described a war between titans that shook the stars. They mentioned cosmic events that had actually happened millions of years ago, before most galactic species had even evolved. How could primitive humans know about the great stellar war of the Second Era? Computer, cross-reference these human myths with galactic historical records, she commanded. The results made her stomach turn. 93% accuracy. These weren't myths at all. They were historical accounts. Meanwhile, on Earth, Marine, Colonel Ryan Brooks was getting ready for something no human had ever done before. He was going to visit an alien ship. With him was Dr. Amy Foster, a woman who knew more about ancient civilizations than anyone else on Earth. "Are you nervous?" Amy asked as they put on their spacesuits. Ryan grinned. "A little? You?" Excited, actually. I've been waiting my whole life for this moment. Ryan looked at her strangely. Waiting for what? First contact. Amy's smile was mysterious. Something like that. The shuttle trip to the alien ship took 2 hours. When they docked, Captain Veltar was waiting for them with a small group of his crew. The aliens were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large black eyes. "Welcome aboard the Astral Dawn," Veltar said through the translation device. "We hope this exchange will help our peoples understand each other. Thank you for having us." Ryan replied, "This is Dr. Foster, our expert on ancient cultures." Kesara stepped forward. "Dr. Foster, I would very much like to speak with you about human history and mythology." Amy nodded. "I'd be happy to help." They moved to a conference room with a large table. Kesara activated a holographic display showing star charts and ancient symbols. "Dr. Foster, these are symbols from your ancient cultures. Can you tell me what they mean?" Amy looked at the display for only a moment before answering. "That's the constellation of Andara, as it appeared during the third galactic cycle. Those symbols mark the locations of the old trade routes between the Vorthan Empire and the Celestial Federation." Kesara's skin went pale. How do you know those names?" "The Vorthan Empire fell 4 million years ago. We only learned about it from archaeological digs on dead worlds. It's in our records," Amy said simply. "What records?" Veltar demanded. Amy pulled out a small tablet and showed them images of cave paintings, ancient carvings, and stone monuments. These are found all over Earth. Every culture has them. Stories of great civilizations among the stars, wars that shook the galaxy, and the rise and fall of cosmic empires. Kesara was studying the images with growing alarm. "These symbols, they're written in Old Galactic. That language has been dead for millions of years. How do your ancient people know it?" "Maybe it's not as dead as you think," Amy replied. "Colonel." Brooks was getting confused. "Amy, what are you talking about?" "These are just old stories and cave paintings." Amy looked at him with sad eyes. "Ryan, what if I told you they weren't stories at all?" On the alien ship's bridge, Captain Veltar was having an emergency meeting with his senior staff. "The situation is getting worse," he told them. "This human scientist knows things that are impossible for her to know. She can read languages that died before her species evolved. She knows about events that we've only recently discovered through archaeology." His communications officer spoke up. "Sir, I've been monitoring their planet's information networks. Their mythology contains detailed descriptions of cosmic events, star maps showing the galaxy as it was millions of years ago, and technical specifications for technologies we're still trying to understand." "Are you saying they have access to predecessor technology?" Veltar asked. "I don't know, sir. But they know things that only the predecessors would have known." Back in the conference room, Kesara was showing Amy more ancient symbols and star charts. With each question, Amy's answers became more detailed and more impossible. "This symbol here," Kesara said, pointing to a complex design. "What does it mean?" "It's the seal of the Forerunner Archive," Amy replied. "It marks the location of hidden knowledge vaults scattered across the galaxy." Kesara nearly fell out of her chair. "The Forerunners are a legend. They're supposed to be the first space-traveling species, but we've never found proof they existed." "You've found proof," Amy said quietly. "You just didn't know what you were looking at." "What do you mean?" Amy stood up and walked to the display. She began pointing to different symbols and explaining their meanings. As she talked, Kesara realized that this human woman knew more about galactic history than their best archaeologists. "The Forerunners didn't disappear," Amy continued. "They scattered. When the great catastrophe came, they spread across the galaxy, hiding their knowledge and waiting for the right time to return." Return from where? Veltar asked, though he was beginning to fear the answer. Amy looked directly at him. From the outer rim. From small, quiet worlds where they could rebuild and grow strong again. The room fell silent. Finally, Cassara spoke. In a whisper. Are you saying that humans are descended from the Forerunners? I'm saying that maybe you should look more closely at human DNA. Amy replied. Colonel Brooks was staring at Amy in shock. Amy, what are you talking about? Are you saying humans are aliens? No, Ryan. I'm saying the aliens are the newcomers. We were here first. Captain Veltar activated his communicator. Bridge, I need an immediate connection to the Galactic Council. Priority Alpha. Yes, sir. What should I tell them? Veltar looked at Amy, who was calmly explaining ancient galactic politics to his stunned science officer. Tell them we may have found the Forerunners, and they've been hiding on a small blue planet, pretending to be a primitive species. As the transmission went out across space, carrying news that would shake the galaxy, Amy Foster smiled. Humanity had kept their secret for millions of years. But now it was time for the galaxy to remember who had built their civilization in the first place. On Earth, in hidden vaults beneath ancient monuments, automated systems began activating. Technologies that had slept for millennia started coming online. Humanity's true heritage was about to be revealed, and the galaxy would never be the same again. The aliens had thought they were visiting a young, primitive world. Instead, they had stumbled upon the sleeping heirs to the galaxy's greatest civilization, and those heirs were beginning to wake up. 1 week after Dr. Amy Foster's shocking claims, the largest archaeological expedition in galactic history was gathering in Earth's orbit. Council archaeologist Prime Zethanol had arrived with 6 research ships and the best scientists from 12 different worlds. They came expecting to prove that humans were just a confused young species with overactive imaginations. They were about to learn how wrong they were. On the surface of Earth, Dr. Kevin Hayes stood in the Egyptian desert, watching alien shuttles land near the Great Pyramid. As Earth's leading expert on pre-human civilizations, he had been chosen to guide the alien researchers. But Kevin knew secrets that would soon shock the galaxy. Welcome to Earth, Kevin said, as Zethanol stepped out of his shuttle. The alien was even taller than the Zephyrians, with gray skin and forearms that moved with graceful precision. Dr. Hayes, I appreciate your cooperation, Zethanol replied. However, I must tell you that the Council finds your people's claims quite impossible to believe. Kevin smiled. I understand your doubt, but I think our first stop will change your mind. They traveled by hover transport to a dig site 50 miles south of Cairo. Kevin had been working here for 3 years, but he had never told anyone what he had really found. This site is officially listed as a normal archaeological dig, Kevin explained as they walked toward a large tent. But what we found here goes much deeper than anyone knows. Inside the tent, a shaft descended deep into the earth. Zethanol looked down into the darkness with his advanced sensors. How deep does it go? He asked. 2 miles, Kevin replied. And it's not natural. Someone built this. As they descended in the lift, Zethanol S instruments began giving readings that made no sense. Dr. Hayes, my sensors are detecting materials that shouldn't exist on this planet. Some of these elements weren't formed until after your solar system was created. That's because they weren't made here, Kevin said calmly. At the bottom of the shaft, they emerged into a vast underground chamber. The walls were covered with symbols that glowed with their own soft light. In the center of the room stood a massive crystalline structure that hummed with hidden energy. ZETH single quotes NOL stared in amazement. This is Forerunner architecture. But that's impossible. Earth is only 4 billion years old. The Forerunners existed long before your planet was formed. Unless, Kevin said quietly, The Forerunners didn't build this here, unless they brought it with them when they came to Earth. Lieutenant Sophie Garcia, who had accompanied the expedition, was studying the symbols on the walls with her portable scanner. Dr. Hayes, these symbols are the same ones we've been seeing in human mythology. But they're not carved into the stone. They're part of the molecular structure of the walls themselves. The whole chamber is grown, not built, Kevin confirmed. This is Forerunner biotechnology. It's designed to last forever. Zephino was taking readings with instruments that were far more advanced than anything humans possessed. But his readings only confirmed what Kevin was saying. The crystalline structure is some kind of data storage device, the alien scientist reported. It contains more information than our largest archives. But the technology is millions of years more advanced than anything in the galaxy today. Can you activate it? Kevin asked. I can try, but... Ethanol stopped as the crystals suddenly began to glow brighter. The chamber filled with a soft humming sound, and then holographic images appeared in the air around them. The images showed star maps, but not of the galaxy as it was today. This was the galaxy as it had been 50 million years ago, when young stars burned bright and worlds that were now dead still supported life. Computer, translate the language protocols. Zephinol commanded. A voice filled the chamber, speaking in a language so old that only the most advanced translation systems could understand it. This is Archive Station Gaia 7, established in the 43rd millennium of the Second Galactic Era. This facility contains backup records of the Great Library and serves as a genetic preservation vault for the Forerunner species during their great exodus to the Outer Rim. Sophie looked at Kevin in shock. Gaia 7? They called Earth Gaia? It's an old human name for our planet, Kevin replied. But apparently, it's older than we thought. The holographic display changed, showing detailed genetic maps and biological data. Zethanol studied the information with growing amazement. Dr. Hayes, this genetic data, it matches human DNA, not similar to it, identical to it. That's because it is human DNA, Kevin said. Or rather, human DNA is Forerunner DNA. We're not descended from the Forerunners. We are the Forerunners. Meanwhile, in Antarctica, another team was making an even more shocking discovery. Dr. Rachel Stone, a quantum physicist, was working with alien scientists to excavate a site that had been buried under ice for millions of years. The ice-penetrating radar shows a massive structure beneath the glacier, reported Dr. Tony Martinez, the expedition leader. It's bigger than most space stations. As they melted through the ice with alien heating devices, they found walls made of the same biotechnology as the Egyptian site. But this facility was much larger and much more complex. This appears to be a major research center, said Dr. Alan Foster, who had joined the expedition. Look at these laboratory spaces. They're designed for genetic engineering on a massive scale. The alien scientists were recording everything, but their excitement was mixed with growing fear. These discoveries meant that everything they thought they knew about galactic history was wrong. In the main laboratory of the Antarctic facility, they found something that changed everything. Crystalline storage devices lined the walls, containing the genetic patterns of millions of species from across the galaxy. This is a seed bank, Rachel realized. They were preserving life from across the galaxy. But why? The answer came when they activated the facility's main computer. Holographic records showed the galaxy during a time of great catastrophe. Stars were dying, planets were being destroyed, and entire civilizations were vanishing. The Forerunners weren't just the first space-traveling species, Alan said as he studied the records. They were trying to save all life in the galaxy from some kind of cosmic disaster. Zethanol was transmitting constant reports back to the Galactic Council. With each new discovery, the implications became more shocking. Christallin storage devices lying the walls, containing the genetic patterns of millions of species from across the galaxy. This is a seed bank, Rachel realized. They were preserving life from across the galaxy. But why? The answer came when they activated the facility's main computer. Holographic records showed the galaxy during a time of great catastrophe. Stars were dying, planets were being destroyed, and entire civilizations were vanishing. The Forerunners weren't just the first space-traveling species, Alan said as he studied the records. They were trying to save all life in the galaxy from some kind of cosmic disaster. With each new discovery, the implications became more shocking. Council leader, we have confirmed that humans possess authentic Forerunner genetic markers, he reported. The archaeological evidence shows that Earth was used as a genetic preservation site during the Second Era catastrophe. The humans are not a young species. They are the direct descendants of the galaxy's oldest civilization. Back at the Egyptian site, Kevin was showing the alien scientists something that made their blood run cold. In a side chamber, they found star maps showing the current locations of every major galactic civilization. These maps show where your homeworlds are, Kevin told Zephanol. But they were made 50 million years ago, before your species evolved. How is that possible? It's not possible, Zephanol whispered. Unless ... Unless the Foreigners didn't just preserve their own genetics, Kevin finished. Unless they guided the evolution of life throughout the galaxy. Unless every intelligent species in the galaxy exists because the Foreigners wanted them to exist. The silence in the chamber was broken only by the humming of ancient technology. Finally, Sophie spoke up. Dr. Hayes, are you saying that the Forerunners created all galactic life? I'm saying that the Forerunners were the gardeners of the galaxy, Kevin replied. They planted seeds of life on countless worlds, guided evolution, and then withdrew to the outer rim to watch their children grow up. And now the children have come home, Zephanol said quietly. As reports from Earth reached the Galactic Council, panic began to spread through the halls of government. Treaties, laws, and territorial boundaries that had stood for millions of years were suddenly meaningless. The species they had assumed was primitive had just revealed themselves to be the rightful owners of everything. On Earth, in hidden vaults around the world, ancient systems continued to activate. Humanity's long sleep was ending, and their true inheritance was beginning to reveal itself. The galaxy was about to learn that they hadn't discovered a new species at all. They had awakened their creators. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was the largest gathering in the organization's 3-million-year history. Representatives from over 2,000 species filled the massive assembly hall on the capital world of Nexus Prime. At the center of it all, Council Leader Mordek tried to maintain order as panic spread through the chamber. The evidence is clear, he announced, his voice echoing across the hall. The species we know as humans are genetically identical to the legendary Forerunners. Every archaeological discovery confirms this impossible truth. On Earth, General Tony Martinez stood in the Situation Room of the Global Defense Command, watching the alien broadcasts with a mixture of pride and concern. Beside him, Secretary of State Helen Parker was preparing for the most important diplomatic meeting in human history. Are you ready for this? Tony asked her. Helen straightened her jacket and checked her notes one final time. I've been ready for this my whole life, General. My family has been preparing for this moment for over 3,000 years. Tony looked at her in surprise. Your family? The Parker lineage has been guardians of the ancient knowledge since the fall of Babylon, Helen explained. We're not the only ones. Families around the world have kept the old secrets alive, waiting for the day when humanity would reclaim its heritage. Meanwhile, on the research ship Cosmic Discovery, Dr. Alan Foster was working with alien scientists to piece together the final parts of the puzzle. Using both human and alien technology, they had been analyzing genetic samples from across the galaxy. The pattern is undeniable, Alan explained to a group of shocked alien researchers. Every intelligent species in the galaxy shares common genetic markers that can only be traced back to Forerunner manipulation. You weren't wrong when you called them the first space-traveling species. They were the first because they created all the others. Zephanol, the chief alien archaeologist, was studying the data with growing amazement. Dr. Foster, are you saying that my own species was created by the Forerunners? Created is too strong a word, Alan replied. Guided might be better. The Forerunners found planets with primitive life and helped that life evolve into intelligence. They were cosmic gardeners, planting seeds of consciousness throughout the galaxy. But why? Asked Dr. Vera Kim, a Zephyrian biologist. Why create so many different species? Because they knew something terrible was coming, Alan said quietly. The geological records show massive cosmic destruction about 50 million years ago. Stars dying, planets destroyed, entire regions of the galaxy becoming uninhabitable. The Forerunners were trying to preserve intelligence itself by spreading it as widely as possible. On Earth, in a secure facility beneath the Rocky Mountains, Captain Lisa Reed was briefing world leaders on information that had been classified for millennia. The tall, dark-haired intelligence officer had access to records that most humans didn't even know existed. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to tell you will change everything you think you know about human history, she began. For the past 50,000 years, certain organizations have maintained fragments of our true heritage. Secret societies, indigenous tribes, religious orders, and academic families have all played a part in preserving the ancient knowledge. The President of the United States leaned forward. Captain Reed, are you telling us that some humans have known about our alien origin all along? Not alien origin, sir. Our origin as the galaxy's eldest species. The myths and legends of every human culture contain fragments of historical truth. The stories of Atlantis, the Norse tales of Asgard, the Hindu accounts of ancient flying machines, they're all distorted memories of our time as a galactic civilization. How distorted? Asked. The Prime Minister of England, Lisa, activated a holographic display showing ancient human artwork and carvings. These cave paintings from France show spacecraft. These carvings from India depict star maps that are astronomically accurate. These Egyptian hieroglyphs describe technologies that we're only now beginning to understand. Our ancestors weren't primitive. They were trying to preserve knowledge of our galactic heritage using the limited tools available to them. Back on Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council was in chaos. Species that had considered themselves the galaxy's senior civilizations were learning that they were essentially children compared to humanity's true age. Leader Mordak called for order. We must address the legal implications of this discovery. If humans are indeed the Forerunners, then every law, every treaty, every territorial agreement in our civilization may be invalid. A representative from the Altarian Collective stood up. Council leader, with respect, we cannot simply accept these claims without verification. The humans may have discovered Forerunner artifacts, but that doesn't make them Forerunners. Actually, it does, said a new voice from the entrance to the chamber. Everyone turned to see Helen Parker entering the hall, accompanied by a small group of human diplomats. She walked to the center of the chamber with the confidence of someone who belonged. There, I am Secretary of State Helen Parker, representing the people of Earth, she announced. We come before you today not as supplicants seeking membership in your galactic community, but as the rightful inheritors of the civilization that created that community in the first place. The chamber erupted in angry voices and shocked exclamations. Mordak called for silence. Secretary Parker, these are extraordinary claims. Do you have proof beyond the archaeological evidence? Helen smiled and activated a small device she carried. Suddenly, the air above the assembly filled with holographic displays showing genetic data, star maps, and historical records. This information comes from archives that have been hidden on Earth for 50 million years, she said. They contain the complete records of Forerunner civilization, including the genetic profiles of every species they guided to intelligence. She pointed to one of the displays. Council Leader Mordak, your species evolved on the fourth planet of the Zerian system. The Forerunners introduced the genetic modifications that led to your intelligence approximately 12 million years ago. The records show the exact genetic sequences that were modified and why. Mordak stared at the display in shock. The information was completely accurate, down to details that only his species' most advanced scientists knew. How is this possible? He whispered. Because we wrote those records, Helen replied. Because the Forerunners were our ancestors, and we are their inheritors. She turned to address the entire assembly. For 50 million years, humanity has been in exile on the outer rim, slowly rebuilding our strength and waiting for the right moment to return. We've watched you grow and develop, proud of what our children have accomplished. But now it's time for the family to be reunited. The silence in the chamber was deafening. Finally, a representative from the Vegan Confederacy spoke up. If this is true, then what do you want from us? Do you claim dominion over the galaxy? Helen's expression grew serious. We claim nothing that isn't freely given. Yes, we are your genetic ancestors. Yes, we guided your evolution. But you have grown into civilizations of your own, with your own rights and freedoms. We don't want to rule you. We want to join you as equals, sharing our ancient knowledge to help all our species reach new heights. And if we refuse? Asked another representative. Helen's smile returned, but there was steel in her voice. Then you refuse. We won't force our heritage on anyone. But consider this. The cosmic catastrophe that drove us into exile 50 million years ago is beginning to repeat itself. The star death patterns are starting again. If we don't work together, we may all face extinction. As Helen's words sank in, the representatives began to understand the true scope of what they were facing. This wasn't just about humanity's heritage. It was about the survival of all intelligent life in the galaxy. On Earth, in hidden bunkers and secret facilities around the world, ancient systems were coming fully online. Technologies that had slept for millions of years were awakening, and humanity was preparing to reclaim its place among the stars. The galaxy's children were about to meet their parents, and nothing would ever be the same again. 6 months after the revelation that shook the galaxy, Ambassador Steve Collins stood on the observation deck of Earth's newest space station, watching construction crews put the finishing touches on humanity's first deep space exploration vessel in 50 million years. The ship was massive, built using a combination of recovered Forerunner technology and modern engineering that surprised even the most advanced alien species. She's beautiful, isn't she? Said Dr. Carol Brooks, joining Steve at the viewport. As humanity's chief technology officer, she had overseen the integration of ancient Forerunner systems with contemporary galactic technology. Hard to believe we built her in just 6 months, Steve replied. Though I suppose built isn't quite the right word. Carol smiled. Awakened is more accurate. Most of the core systems were already here, sleeping in hidden vaults around the solar system. We just had to remember how to turn them on. The month since first contact had been a whirlwind of activity. After Secretary of State Helen Parker's dramatic revelation to the Galactic Council, the political landscape of the galaxy had changed forever. Some species had welcomed humanity with open arms, eager to learn from their ancient ancestors. Others had reacted with fear and suspicion, worried about what humanity's return might mean for their own civilizations. But the vote had been close, closer than anyone expected. By a margin of just 53%, the Galactic Council had voted to recognize humanity as the elder species, granting them full membership and acknowledging their historical claims to Forerunner territories and technologies. Ambassador Collins, we have an incoming transmission from the Galactic Assembly, announced Lieutenant Kevin Turner from the communications station. Put it through, Lieutenant, Steve replied. The holographic image of Council Leader Mordak appeared. In the center of the observation deck, the tall alien leader looked tired but determined. Ambassador Collins, the Council has reached a final decision regarding humanity's territorial claims, Mordak said. We have agreed to recognize your species' historical rights to the Forerunner core worlds, but with conditions. Steve nodded. What conditions, Council Leader? The core worlds have been uninhabited for millions of years. Their dead systems, destroyed in the ancient catastrophe. Your species may claim them, but you'll need to rebuild everything from scratch. That's acceptable, Steve replied. We weren't expecting inhabited worlds to be turned over to us. We're more interested in the technological archives and research facilities. There's more, Mordak continued. In exchange for recognition of your claims, humanity must share all recovered Forerunner technology with the galactic community. No species can be allowed to have such a massive technological advantage. Steve exchanged glances with Carol. They had expected this demand. We agreed to share our technology, Steve said, but gradually and safely. Some Forerunner systems are powerful enough to destroy star systems if misused. We'll establish training programs and safety protocols for each species that wants access. And the defensive systems? Mordak asked. This was the real issue that had the galactic community worried. During the negotiations, humanity had revealed that Earth wasn't as defenseless as it appeared. Hidden defensive platforms throughout the solar system were equipped with technology that made them nearly invulnerable to attack. Our defensive systems will remain under human control, Steve said firmly. But we give you our word that they will only be used for protection, never for aggression. Carol stepped forward. Council Leader, may I demonstrate something? Mordak nodded, and Carol activated a control panel. Around Earth's orbit, previously invisible structures suddenly became visible as their cloaking systems disengaged. Massive space stations and defensive platforms that had been hidden for thousands of years revealed themselves. These platforms have been protecting Earth since the early days of human civilization, Carl explained. They're automated systems, left by our ancestors to ensure our survival until we were ready to reclaim our heritage. Now that we're ready, they're no longer needed. She pressed another control, and the defensive platforms began moving. Instead of taking aggressive positions, they started moving to the edges of the solar system. We're repositioning them to serve as early warning systems for cosmic threats, Carl continued. The same kind of stellar catastrophes that drove our ancestors into exile are starting to happen again. These platforms will help protect not just Earth, but all the inhabited systems in this region of the galaxy. Mordak looked impressed despite himself. You're offering to use your most advanced technology to protect other species? We're offering to fulfill our original purpose, Steve replied. The Forerunners didn't just create galactic civilization. They protected it. We intend to continue that mission. On the bridge of the new exploration vessel, now named the Starward Dawn, Captain Jake Morrison was conducting final systems checks. The former commander of the orbital platform New Horizon had been chosen to captain humanity's return to deep space. All systems show green, Captain, reported Lieutenant Sophie Garcia, who had been promoted to his second-in-command. The hybrid engines are operating at peak efficiency. Incredible, said Zethanol, the alien archaeologist who had volunteered to join the human crew. The combination of Forerunner technology and modern engineering is producing energy outputs I've never seen before. Jake smiled. Wait until you see what we can do in deep space. Our first mission is to visit the old Forerunner core worlds and assess what can be salvaged. Are you nervous about going back? Sophie asked. A little, Jake admitted. According to the archives, some of those worlds were home to billions of our ancestors. Now they're dead rocks floating in space. It's going to be emotional, but also hopeful, added Dr. Alan Foster, who had been assigned to the mission as Chief Science Officer. Every world we reclaim is a step toward rebuilding what was lost. On Earth, the changes were visible everywhere. Ancient sites around the world had revealed hidden technology as automated systems came online. The pyramids in Egypt now glowed, with soft internal light as their power systems activated. Stonehenge had revealed itself to be a sophisticated communications array. And deep beneath the ocean, massive structures were rising from the sea floor where they had waited for millions of years. "The public is handling the revelations better than expected," reported General Tony Martinez during a briefing with World leaders. "There's excitement about our true heritage, but also concern about what it means for our future." "Any resistance movements?" asked Helen Parker. "Some," Tony admitted. "There are groups that prefer the idea of humanity as a young, innocent species rather than the inheritors of an ancient galactic empire. But they're a small minority." "What about the other galactic species?" asked the President of the United States. Helen pulled up a diplomatic status board. "Mixed reactions. The older, more established species are nervous about humanity's return, but they're being cautious rather than hostile. The younger species are mostly excited. They see us as elder siblings who can teach them new things." "And the territories we've claimed?" 43 star systems in the old Forerunner core regions, Helen reported. "All uninhabited, as promised. Our survey teams estimate it will take 50 years to fully restore even one of them to habitability. But we're not doing it alone," added Dr. Carol Brooks. 7 species have volunteered to help with the restoration projects in exchange for access to Forerunner technology. It's becoming a truly galactic effort. 3 months later, the Starward Dawn entered the Kepler 442 system, the first stop on their journey to the old Forerunner worlds. What they found there took everyone's breath away. The planet that had once been the jewel of the Forerunner Empire was now a barren world, its atmosphere stripped away by the ancient catastrophe. But even in death, it was magnificent. Massive. Crystal cities still stood on the surface, their transparent walls catching the light of the system's red dwarf star. "Life support readings show the atmosphere is completely gone," reported Sophie. "But the cities are intact. The Forerunner building materials have survived 50 million years without any maintenance." "Look at the size of them," whispered Zethanol. "Some of those towers are 100 kilometers tall. How many people lived here?" "According to the archives, about 12 billion, Jake replied quietly. "All of them are ancestors." As they entered orbit around the dead world, automated systems on the planet's surface began activating. Lights appeared in the crystal cities, and communication signals reached the ship. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission from the planet," Sophie reported. "It's in old Forerunner language. What does it say?" Sophie listened to the translation. "Welcome home, children of the stars. The archive awaits your return." Jake stood up from his captain's chair and looked out at the ancient world below. Around him, his mixed crew of humans and aliens worked together, united in their mission to reclaim humanity's heritage and build a better future for all galactic civilizations. "Take us down, Sophie," he ordered. "It's time to go home." As the Starward Dawn descended toward the crystal cities of their ancestors, Jake Morrison knew that this was just the beginning. Humanity had spent 50 million years in exile, slowly, rebuilding their strength and waiting for the right moment to return. Now that moment had arrived. The